Lysimachus, the most reckless of them all, was possessed of bravery that was often a hazard to his own comrades. Python, dour but steadfast, unquestioning in his execution of even the most cruel orders when others might quail. And then there were the older two, Aristonus, who had been Alexander's father Philip II of that name's bodyguard, the only survivor of the old regime, whose counsel was infused with the wisdom of one old in the ways of war. And finally, Ptolemy. What to make of Ptolemy, whose looks hinted at him being a bastard brother? At once gentle and forgiving, and yet capable of ruthless political adroitness, should that part of his nature be abused. The least competent militarily, but the most likely to succeed in the political long game. Alexander looked past the seven, as Perdiccas repeated the question a third time, to the men beyond the bed, men who had followed him, sharing the dangers and the triumphs on his 10-year journey of conquest, silent in the shadows as they strained to hear him answer. Passing along the dozen or so faces he knew so well, his weak gaze rested on Cassandros, standing next to his younger half-brother Iolaus, and Alexander thought he detected triumph in his eyes. His sickness had started the day after Cassandros's arrival from Macedon as his father, Antipatros's messenger. Had Antipatros, the man who had ruled as regent in the motherland for the past 10 years, sent his eldest son with woman's weapon of poison to murder him, rather than obey the summons that Alexander had sent? Iolaus was, after all, his cupbearer, and could easily have administered the dose. Alexander cursed Cassandros inwardly, having always hated the ginger-haired, pock-marked prig, whose loathing had been returned in equal measure and augmented by his humiliation of having been left behind for all those years. His mind turned back to Antipatros, 1,000 miles away in Pella, the capital of Macedon, and his constant feud with his, Alexander's mother, Olympias, scheming and brooding back in her native Molossia, a part of the kingdom of Epirus. How would that resolve without him playing off one against the other? Who would kill whom? But then, half obscured by a column at the far end of the dying chamber, Alexander glimpsed a woman, a pregnant woman, his Bactrian wife, Roxana, 3 months from full term. What chance would a half-caste child have? Not many shared his dream of uniting the peoples of East and West. There would be few Macedonians of pure blood who would rally behind a half-breed infant born to an Eastern wildcat. So it was with certainty, as he closed his eyes, that Alexander foresaw the struggles that would mark his passing, both in Macedon and here in Babylon, and then throughout the subject Greek states, as well as among those of his satraps who had carved out fiefdoms of their own in the vast empire he had wrought. Men such as Antigonus, the one-eyed satrap of Phrygia, and Menander, satrap of Lydia, the last of Philip's generals. Then there was Harpalus, his treasurer, whom he had already forgiven once for his dishonesty, who, rather than face Alexander's wrath a second time, had absconded with 800 talents of gold and silver, enough to raise a formidable army, or live in luxury for the rest of his life. Which would he choose? And what would Craterus do? Craterus, the darling of the army, a general second to only Alexander himself, now somewhere between Babylon and Macedon, leading 10,000 veterans home. Would he feel that he should have been named Alexander's successor? But Alexander, weakness creeping through him, had made his decision, and, as Perdiccas once more put the question, he shook his head. Why should he give away what he had won? Why should he give the chance to another to equal or surpass him? Why should not he, alone, forever, be known as the Great? No, he would not do it. He was not going to name the strongest. He was not going to give them any help. Let them work it out for themselves. Opening his eyes one last time, he looked up at the ceiling, his breathing fading. All 7 around the bed leant in, hoping to hear their name. Alexander twitched one last smile. I foresee great struggles at my funeral games. He gave a sigh. Then the eyes that had seen more wonders than any before in this world closed, and they saw no more. Perdiccas, the half-chosen. The ring felt heavy in his hand as Perdiccas's fingers closed about it.